If there is one tool that I think every designer should have in their prototyping tool belt, it is knowing how to use a Lottie file. Now, Lottie files were created in 2017 by Airbnb as a way to render After Effects animations as code. When it comes to prototyping, there is simply no better way to add motion and delight to our designs. So in this lesson, we're going to walk through every step of prototyping a new animation using a Lottie file. Let's dive in. At this point, I would never use a GIF, a video, or hand-coded CSS to animate anything in my designs. Lottie is just easier. And there's really four main reasons why I think that it's superior. One is that it's a much smaller file size than a video or a GIF. The second reason is that you can create almost anything in After Effects, incredibly complex, beautiful animations that simply wouldn't be realistic to create in CSS. Now, the third reason is that you have a ton of control with Lottie, and that's because you can tie specific code to individual keyframes within your Lottie animation. One of my favorite examples is as I'm scrolling down a website, I could progress through an animation depending on where I'm at on the page. I even use Lottie for the logo animation on the Figma Academy website. When you refresh the page here, that little scroll and pop out, that's all a Lottie file. And I'm simply telling Webflow to play this animation on page load. Now, the fourth reason is there are a ton of awesome free libraries and open source animations that we can quickly grab and use in our designs. If you're anything like me, you are not a world-class After Effects motion designer. It's freaking hard and it takes a long time to make animations that look really great. And so being able to quickly jump in and grab something that I can customize for my own projects is awesome. And I highly recommend doing that instead of spending hours tweaking easing curves in After Effects or some other software. Okay, now it is time to create our animation. On the left here, I've written out the 6 steps that I use every time that I'm prototyping an animation using Lottie. And the example that we're going to use is a post-course survey. And after students submit the final question, I want to have some moment of delight where I am congratulating them, making them feel good, and I want that to be a Lottie file. So if we look at our checklist here, the first thing is we got to find a Lottie file to use. And the way I'm going to do that is by going to lottiefiles.com, which I've linked in the slides. It's a wonderful resource, and this is pretty much the only website that I use. Now, you can see here that all I've done is search for success, and then actually filtered the type to free here. And you can scroll through pages and pages of success animations. I kind of like this one right here, but it doesn't match perfectly. That blue is not really vibing with the brand that I'm trying to create. I'm kind of working on this pink here. Thankfully, step number 2 is to customize the colors to match your brand, which Lottie Files allows us to do, and I'll show you how in a second. First, though, I need to go ahead and get my cherry hex code to use. Awesome. So once you have the file selected that you want to use, if you scroll down, there's this Edit Layer Colors button. And that's going to open up a separate editor that you can use to override the colors. In this case, I think that I'm fine with this turquoise for our purposes, but I do want to make this pink. So I'm going to paste in the hex code, hit update, and voila. Now, a little bit of a heads up, we're going to end up importing this as a GIF, which means we can't have a transparent background. So we want to update the background color to reflect the background that it's going to be sitting on. Now that I have the background color copied to my clipboard, I can pop back in here. You can see there's a background color line item. If I simply override the hex code, hit enter, and now we have an animation that is ready to match our brand. So the next step is to simply download the JSON file here. And if we pop back into Figma, we can see that step number 3 is import the Lottie file into Figma. And the way we do that is we use the Lottie Files plugin within the Figma community. So you have to install that. And then we can simply select our JSON file, and it's going to upload it for us. Unfortunately, a lot of times you have to add this background color again. Not 100% sure why, but just make sure that you have the right background color. And then the next thing you'll notice is it's giving you two options, insert as SVG or convert to GIF. I always select convert to GIF because I'm trying to prototype the motion, and that's really what this is all about. So I'm going to hit convert to GIF. It's going to do a quick render and then add it to the canvas in Figma, where we can take that GIF file and move it into the right place in our designs. Awesome. It always drops it up at the top here. So we're going to take this and let's drag it into our frame. Now, if we go back to our checklist, we'll see number 4 says add an animating and a resolved state. And the reason for that is if we head into our prototype file here, you'll see that my GIF is just going to loop repeatedly, which makes sense because even though Lottie files are so cool and you can do all this amazing stuff with them, when we import it into Figma, it's still just a GIF and it's still going to loop, which is a little bit annoying, but there's an easy fix. What we're going to do is create a third frame called resolved. And all this is going to do is take a still shot of the last frame in our GIF. Here's how we make that happen. Click on your GIF here. If you open up the image, you'll see that you have this little progress bar where you can actually change what the preview looks like in Figma. So drag that all the way to the end and then export as an image. And so now what we can do is take this, paste it into this new frame over here, only swap out our GIF for our new static image. Perfect. So the goal is after this animation has progressed once, we're going to do an after delay transition to then stop the animation so that it doesn't look like we have this looping GIF. But the question then is, how long do we make this after delay animation for? It's going to default to 800 milliseconds, but is that actually right? Thankfully, we get this information from the Lottie files site. If you go back into your editor here, you'll notice that the length of the entire animation is 2 seconds, which is 2,000 milliseconds. I might want to cut this a little bit short. So let's say 1900 milliseconds, and let's just see what that looks like really quickly. So if I hit submit, it's going to loop through. All right, so there's a little flash there. So I'm just going to cut it a bit shorter, maybe to 1800 milliseconds. Perfect. So without you really being able to tell, we're switching between those two frames and we've kind of converted our GIF into a Lottie file. So we have our Lottie animation wired up correctly. The last step though, and a really important one, is we got to remember to document everything for handoff. Developers not going to be able to come in here and know what's going on, and we definitely don't want them to export a GIF and put that into our designs. And so the way that I will handle this is I'll add another one of my note components at the front of the flow. I'll explain a little bit about what is going on. Then the most important thing though is we want to grab the URL from Lottie files so that the developers can really quickly access that JSON file. And thankfully, Lottie files makes that part of the process amazing. At some point, once I know that this is the design that I'm going to use, I'll scroll down and hit upload to my previews. And if you click this button, it's automatically going to add this to my library. It now lives right there at the front. And the great thing is then I have this personal folder called My Private Animations, which contains all of the animations that I'm using in my designs. And then at any time, you can click on your animations and copy the asset link right here, which I will then add to my node component. And now developers have everything they need to see how it works. I'll probably also create a quick GIF of this interaction just to make it very easy to share and for developers to find it. After that, it's actually really easy for engineering to work with Lottie files. They're going to love you for it as well. And it's a super straightforward way to add that extra dash of delight to your designs.